Hello, everyone. Welcome to MedHeads. My name is Dr. Fergal Armstrong, and today I have a very special guest, Dr. Massimo Raimondo Battista. Massimo, how are you?
I'm doing well, Fergal. Thanks for having me on today.
Great that you could join us. Now, Massimo, you are a doctor in training, working for a major public hospital network, and I've had the pleasure of working you before. And we got talking about how hard it is to get into medical school. So I thought today we'd talk about, first of all, your journey, and then secondly, the tips that you might give to people who are thinking about going into medical school. So first of all, let's think about your journey. How did you start?
Sure thing. So, obviously born and raised in Australia, so I went through the VCE system. Following that, I went and did a Bachelor of Biomedicine. Subsequent to that, didn't perform as well as I'd liked initially, so ended up having to do a subsequent degree, and I did a Bachelor of Health Sciences. And then, thankfully, after that, found myself in a spot in Doctor of Medicine.
So you did 2 undergraduate degrees to get into medical school.
That is correct, yes.
That's amazing. Why do you think it's so competitive?
That's a good question. I think it's so competitive for a number of reasons. I guess given the career, I think it's associated with many desirable aspects in a longer working life. But
Uh-huh.
also to that there's a lot of individuals that want to do it and not so many spots. So I think that just
Mm.
drives a simple supply demand.
Yeah, it is supply and demand, but why do so many young people want to get a career in medicine?
I think that there is an overwhelming increase in curiosity, interest in medical as a dynamic space that's ever evolving. And I guess a lot of people in it are forever learning, as you always tell me. Um, so I see that a lot of people are a bit more invested in knowing the how to and I guess things with the body. And then subsequent to that, perhaps there's other elements such as a perception of prestige, maybe finance is what I've heard from other candidates, which if you know once you're in the field, perhaps not exactly financial, but in time maybe.
I say to people who are thinking about a career in medicine, unless you have a burning passion that overrides everything else in your life, there's no point in even thinking about a career in medicine because medicine, you don't get weekends off, you don't get public holidays off, you don't get Christmas off, you don't get your birthdays off. The hours are grinding. The hours grind you down. And I've never met a doctor working in the public health system that thinks, you know what, I've got a cushy job and I'm not overworked. What would you think are, or what would you say are the downsides of a career in medicine, first of all?
I think you touched on a few of them there. So I guess, yes, a work life balance doesn't lend exactly into a career of medicine as we would find. Yeah. Perhaps in the later stages where you become a consultant, you can establish your practice as you'd like, but at least in the shorter term, 5 to 10 years, probably unlikely. Some other downsides is the nature of the job. So, as much as you feel like you want to make a difference personally, it's a bigger system and you might feel a bit insignificant in the larger number of things because there's a lot of moving parts in a hospital. And although that the hospitals do their best to make you feel valued, it can easily be lost in the stream of things. Beyond that, dealing with patients itself, is a lot of a motivating factor for some, but patients you'll meet from all walks of life, and some you'll get along with, some you
Mhm.
won't. And I once heard a quote, I'm actually not sure if it's from you, but patients will live and die because of you, in spite of you, whether or not you do your best or not. So there's obviously those challenges as well.
That's not my quotation, but a quotation that I've often said is patients don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
I think that's it. Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. Very true.
So there are some downsides, and from my point of view, if I really wanted to make untold wealth, there's no way that I'd do it in medicine. I mean, I suppose private orthopedics, private cardiology, private ophthalmology. These are high earning specialties, but really, if money is a motivating factor for you, would you recommend a career in medicine for that kind of individual?
No, absolutely not.
No. Yeah, and so there are plenty of other ways of earning money, developing prestige, having a nice lifestyle that do not require you to give up your heart and soul and every single public holiday and your birthday and Christmas. There are other ways of doing it. What would you say are the reasons why someone might want to do medicine?
It's a good question. I think a curiosity, a desire to learn.
Yeah,
So I think that's something that I would stress
yeah,
that in medicine, whether I'm at my stage or your stage, you are forever learning. There's always something new, different, and
yeah.
I guess evidence changes so rapidly that if you haven't updated your medical knowledge within the year, it might be obsolete. So I would say yes, willingness to learn, curiosity. There's obviously a personal
Mhm,
element to it. Some fields of medicine, such as radiology, might be less patient facing, but invariably, for most parts of medicine, you will have to be patient facing. So I suppose some kind of personal
mhm,
element to enjoy the patient interaction. I think that is ideal.
mhm.
Another reason to do medicine would be, I guess it's like an investigative thing. So, not to say it's a game, but about finding out what's wrong with people, physiologically, medically, and then providing them a management or investigations to lead to a management and bringing them back to a good quality of life or health is a rewarding experience in itself.
And what about this idea of care and wanting to make a difference?
I think that's tricky as well. So I guess I can only talk from my own point of view, but I find some fulfillment in the patient interaction, at least at an immediate level, from a personal level myself. Will that be in the emergency department for a
Mm,
30-minute review or on the wards with, in some ways, a continuity of care. But I think ultimately it is difficult in a bigger system to feel like you're making such a big change when you only have a certain amount of patient interactions, a certain amount of time, and a lot of other pressures driving you day to day.
It is very easy to get lost and not see the wood for the trees if you're in the middle of a 40-patient ward round, aren't you?
Definitely, definitely.
There are nonetheless, as we've said earlier, there are way more applicants than there are training places to get into medical school. Now, your journey, you had to do 2 undergraduate degrees to get into medical school. What's the easier way? What would be the right way of getting into medical school, if there is such a thing, Lee?
Sure. So I could definitely talk to that. So in my experience doing Bachelor of Biomedicine at one of the bigger universities in Melbourne, it was quite an arduous few years in that I wasn't really enjoying my studies. I found myself pretty I guess, down and out with the overwhelming amount of work assessments. And what I'd find is that actually the subsequent degree that I did, Bachelor of Health Sciences, was much more conducive to an academic, balanced work life, if you will, an enjoyable level of study without being, I guess, too niche into the academia of things. And
Mm,
ultimately, doing an undergraduate is only a stepping stone to get to the postgraduate, where, albeit you'll learn some important things, um, albeit that you'll learn some important things in your undergraduate degree. Postgraduate medicine is where you'll learn the crux of medicine and the theory practice behind it all. So, to answer your question more directly, I mentor a lot of prospective medical students and doctors and about the best path forward. And what I advocate for is rather than, I guess, attaining a ATAR of 99, which, or great if you get that. It's not the be all or end all. So the ATAR is your stepping stone into university here. Shouldn't focus so much on the number, but inevitably you do need to get a decent enough score to get into a degree. And I advocate for Bachelor of Health Sciences being one of them, or similarly another degree like Bachelor of Sciences. The reason why you might ask, why does that perhaps set you up better or set you up differently to a Bachelor of Biomedicine, which is in part curated for you to end up in a medical field, is that there's a lot more scope in practice in health sciences that you can undertake nutrition subjects, you can undertake law subjects, if you will, as electives. But ultimately, the core units of those university degrees, that being health sciences, will still set you up in a way for medicine and doesn't, I guess, subject you to the nuanced part of academia where it's harder to perform well on assessments. Because at the end of the day, to the universities, until you're a student or a medical student, you are just a number, and that's how we rank you here in Australia. So you ultimately want to get into a course where you'll perform your best. That is as a GPA or grade point average at a university, and alongside the GAMSAT, which is a graduate admission medical school test. Using those two scores, you are given a combo score ranked for an interview. And then based on that interview, then you'll be interviewed at whatever respective university. And then finally to them, I guess you have a bit of identity once you do your interview. To summarize, rather than going through the classic path, which is biomedicine and medicine, or biomedicine and dentistry, or whatever it may be, I would actually advocate for doing something like health sciences, or even nowadays, some universities in Victoria, you don't need to have prerequisite subjects in physiology and anatomy at a level 2 level, which is second year university. So some people from engineering, law, IT, they end up doing medicine because they've got their passions and motivations in another way. And you can pick up elective subjects in physiology and anatomy in a law degree, if you will, or IT or engineering, rather than going through the classical pathway, which is a bit more difficult than other ways, perhaps.
So there's a lot to unpack there. But first of all, I just want to make the point that you've just said you don't need to have a 99% ATAR and then go straight into medical school from that.
No, you don't.
But there are some people that for whom that is an appropriate pathway.
Absolutely.
So to get into medical school via the direct path, if we can call it that, you've got to be in the top 1% of your cohort. Is that right?
Yeah. So they don't typically accept. So the university that offer undergraduate medicine, which is a 5-year degree, typically at
Yeah.
least need a 99 at least. And then alongside that, you do an undergraduate medical admissions test, or the UMAT, which they might have changed to the USMLE this year, which is more akin to the American Sen. Same style exam. You need to be in like the high 90th percentile on that exam as well for admission. So I think the course only has about 400, 500 students, and they get thousands of applicants as well for undergraduate medicine.
So let me get this right. You got to be in the top percentile, 1 percentile of the nation doing VCE, and at the same time, you have to do effectively the USMLE, which is the United States Medical Licensing Exam, as an undergraduate. So you've got to do all the. That doesn't make sense to me. You've got to do all USMLE is full of clinical stuff, and if you've just come out of high school and you know a little bit about physics, chemistry, and biology, how are you supposed to do the UMAT or the USMLE?
So the UMAT perhaps a bit different. I think I've just made it akin to the USMLE, not
Right,
exactly, but the
right,
UMAT is 3 sections. One section is problem solving. So like they give you geometric things and ask you to tell what's the next shape in the pattern along that
right,
fashion.
right,
There's a kind of a clinical section to it where they give you cases and you answer which is most appropriate via multiple choice. And then there's an essay part. It's a 3-hour exam, but that's pretty much the crux of it. They use that score on your ATAR
right,
and see your performance. Yeah,
right. And so there are thousands, all hunting for 400 places for an
roundabout.
undergraduate medical
Yes,
degree for 5 years.
yes.
That's just grind, isn't it? There's no fun in your life for how many years? I don't know. The next way of doing it would be what I would term the indirect path, and you've alluded to this. So you do your ATAR, and you go and do a health sciences degree as a springboard to getting into a postgraduate medical degree. So the postgraduate medical degree is 4 years. Your undergraduate degree is 3 years or 4 years?
Yeah, so typically 3 years.
3 years. So compare that to the direct route where you're going from high school for a 5-year degree. So it's really only 1 more year and or sorry, 2 more years. It's 5 to
Too.
7 years, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit less stressed and compressed. You said that the best degree to do is a health sciences degree because it's a little bit more varied. The scope of the studies is wider, and you find it personally less stressful because you did both. Yeah,
I did both. Yeah.
that's crazy. You had to do two. What? Why did you do that?
Coming out of school, I thought I was, doing Bachelor of Biomedicine. I was setting myself up for a career in medicine in 3 short years.
Yeah,
Soon I found that getting the higher marks in Bachelor of Biomedicine was not as easy as I thought. So to quote numbers, grade point average is what we use as a
yeah,
result, not to be confused with weighted average mark or WAM. So GPA to get into medicine after an undergraduate degree, you're looking like the minimum would be 6.5 out of 7. And what that means is at least 75 on every university subject, give or take, 75 to 79 would give you a 6.5. Anything above 80 at university gives you a perfect 7. So I finished my Bachelor of Biomedicine with about a GPA of around 6. That didn't cut the mustard for medicine at that time. So I found myself in a position of what next? So I started actually doing an honors project. And after 2 weeks in the lab, I thought this wasn't for me. And I was left with a dilemma on what next. So I read through the admissions guide for medicine back to front, and I was trying to find a way in. And then I thought, what about health sciences? So I undertook studies in Bachelor of Health Sciences, majoring in nutrition and exercise physiology. Having
Mhm.
already done the prerequisites in biomedicine, I was set up to apply to most universities, which was helpful. But what I actually found that is I could do, I overloaded subjects throughout the Bachelor of Health Sciences, along with credits I received from my previous degree. So what is essentially a 3-year degree took me 18 months to do. So I just accelerated those studies. Finishing
Yeah.
that, my GPA was 7 out of 7. So I was in a better place for an application to
Right.
medicine.
Right. So the GPA score of 6.5 or more is effectively you need at least 75% in your exams at university in your undergraduate degree to be even considered for an admission to postgraduate medicine. Now, over what time are those averages taken? Because when I went to med school, I was told that the first year exams didn't really count. Yeah. So I had a good
That was
time
my
in my
thinking
first
too.
I had quite a good time in my first year of undergraduate medicine, but this is back in the day when you could have a good time. Um, so is the very first exam you enter into your undergraduate course when you're fresh out when you're fresh in, you haven't even settled down yet, and you're doing your first end of term paper exam. Does that count to your GPA?
It most definitely will count to your GPA.
So there is absolutely no room for keeping your eye off the ball, falling in love, falling out of love, going to a lecture hungover. You have to hit the ground running literally from your first day of a 3-year undergraduate degree to actually ensure that you can get a GPA of 6.5 to get into medical school. That's what you're saying.
Your only love can be medicine. Yeah.
You can't be anything less than your best on top of your game at your peak performance for every single exam that you do from the moment you enter an undergraduate degree. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. You would want to, every opportunity you have to get a good grade, you would want to seize it.
Now, what about the projects that I used to abhor were the group projects where you'd be allocated 4 or 5 other colleagues and you were gonna be marked on the project and everyone got the same mark. That used to drive me nuts because invariably in any team, there are those that are weaker, lazier, not committed as you are, and they can, I had the feeling sometimes that I was carrying a lot of my colleagues.
Invariably, that is a part of studies, is group assignments, to some benefit for some and to the detriment of others. And at least I guess what I will say is in some degrees you'll find that not everyone is as passionate as you, because not everyone wants to do medicine. Perhaps in biomedicine everyone wants to do medicine, but should you do a Bachelor of Health Sciences, not everyone wants to do medicine. So you might find that you would just carry more of the assignment when because you don't have that leeway to lose marks. So like I said, taking every opportunity to perform as best you
Yeah,
can in assessments is, I guess, part of it
yeah.
all. Yeah.
'Cause so even those assessments still count to your personal individual GPA. So you could be on track to get a 7 and your team, for whatever reason, has a bad day, and all of a sudden, you're down to 6.5.
That's part of it all.
Or you could be running at 6.5 and all of a sudden drop down to 6 and you don't have a hope of getting into medical school.
On balance, there's ways that you could perform better on other things, but on average, you need to get around the 75 on everything. Yes.
I'm a 15-year-old kid. I've woken up, I wanna be a doctor. I've listened to Massimo's advice. I'm gonna do a health science bachelor's degree. I've managed to get a GPA of 6.5 to 7. Then I gotta do something else. What's that?
Yeah. So you got to sit the GAMSAT, which I said earlier, UMAT. I meant to say it's akin to the UCAT, not the USMLE, sorry. But it is, I guess,
Ah, right,
UMAT's
right.
older brother or sibling or sister. It's a 6-hour exam, which I hear now is online. Back in the day, it was in person, and that is quite an arduous exam, which a lot of people find as a big hurdle. Um, Similarly, it's got 3 sections. One section is a problem-solving, deciphering section of, I guess, cases, if you will. Another section of 2 essays, and then a third section, which is like the USMLE, where you've got the biology, physics, mathematics, chemistry. And that's the largest section, 3 hours. So you have to do
It's a
GPA and
6-hour
CAMS.
exam,
Yes.
all in one go.
When I had sat it, they gave you a half an hour break to have lunch. Nowadays, if it's online, I understand they do part of the exam on one day, and then they do the other part of the exam the subsequent day.
All right. So how do you prepare for the GAMSAT? That's a $1,000,000 question, isn't it?
The GAMSAT is its own kettle of fish. So interestingly, I should actually preface that sitting it more than once is not uncommon. I myself sat
Yeah.
it 4 times, um, just to get myself into medicine. But I think the best way that I found to perform well in the GAMSAT was exposure, exposure, exposure. Get as many questions as you can, do as many questions as you can, because a part of it, albeit is fundamental knowledge, it's also a bit pattern recognition formulaic. If you can get familiar with how they ask the questions and, I guess get to an answer quicker, because half the battle is the time, is that you find that you got so many
Yeah.
questions, not enough time, not many people finish it, and you want to have a go at
Yeah.
every question you can. So
Yeah.
I guess the underpinnings in the biology, physics, mathematics are, what they are, do those studies a bit more tangible. But the essays,
Yeah.
I would read widely, practice essays under timed, do previous questions, just get as much exposure and breadth as you can, because ultimately that will give you the best opportunity. I understand there's tutoring sessions, they're quite expensive, but I think if you're motivated and self directed, then you can find yourself getting a good result, especially with the advent of things like AI. If you could ask AI, write me a GAMSAT style question, it'll spit one out back at you. And I think that'll be the best exposure. There's also many courses. So the thing I'll say about doing the courses, again, a bit expensive, but I would say doing the courses at the facilities under timed exam conditions to emulate the exam environment timing would be the thing that I would recommend. You don't have to do the
Yeah.
full program, which is X $1,000 and this amount of time. But if you do the self-directed stuff well and then practice on the environment, I think sets you up the best way, just like any study.
So let's go back to your journey. High school, ATAR. Did you do the MUMAT or whatever that thing was called?
I actually did
The,
the UMAT too. So
right.
I took
Okay.
every
So you
opportunity I
did
could. Yeah.
right. So you did ATAR. You did UMAT twice. Then you did biomedical
UMAT
sciences.
once, GAMSAT 4
Sorry.
times. Yeah.
ATAR, UMAT once, biomedical studies, then a health sciences degree in half the time, then the GAMSAT 4 times, and then you got to medical school.
And then I got to medical
Having
school.
gone through that arduous journey, how was medical school for you?
Funnily enough, out of everything, because it was so in line with what I wanted to do, I would say it's not the easiest, but it was the most interesting. And for that reason, I found it the most enjoyable.
Right. So there must have been times in that journey before you got into medical school that you were troubled with self-doubt. Why are you putting yourself through that? Did you ever think that?
Of course, I think it's only natural having done so many
Yeah.
thing, are
Yeah.
you worth it? Is this worth it? Am I good
Yeah.
enough? And I
Yeah.
think it's a perpetuating thing even when you're a doctor. There's this phenomenon of the imposter syndrome. Should I be
Yeah.
here? Am I in the right place? Um,
Yeah.
and I think for me, it's just about reframing that. Hearing good feedback from good mentors like yourself, doing your best, and just asking why and knowing your boundaries. So at least that's when you're a doctor. But throughout the studies, I just focus on the light at the end of the tunnel because, you
Yeah.
know, eventually doing enough work will get you there.
Final question, Massimo. Was it worth it?
I would say yes, definitely.
There you have it, from the horse's mouth. That's all for today, folks. My name's Dr. Fergal Armstrong, and this has been MedHeads.